You're listening to the Home Staging Show podcast. I'm your host, Cindy Lin. This is the show where we talk about all things real estate, home staging, and selling your home to live and to sell. Welcome back to Season 2. This is Episode 2. Our show is brought to you by our in-house product, EcoJo, the eco-friendly St. Joseph statue home selling kit. In real estate, there's a tradition to bury St. Joseph statues for good luck. But because the existing products on the market were made with plastic, we made an eco-friendly version named EcoJo. He's all natural, won't harm the earth. We're currently having a 50% off sale on our website. For more information, you can visit www.ecojokits.com. That's spelled ECOJOEKITS.com. This podcast is also brought to you by our Cash in the Cushions business courses for home stagers. If you're thinking about getting into the home staging business and not sure where to start, our Level 1 Launcher program is designed for those of you who are thinking about venturing into the home staging industry. This 90-page workbook clarifies frequently asked questions about starting a home staging business. It's also going to help you navigate the waters of the marketplace so you can avoid the common slip-ups. In addition to our Level 1 Launcher course, we also have a pre-sale going on right now for our Level 2 six-figure floor plan course. I developed this business course to be a complete course on building a profitable home staging business. I was really tired of seeing the new home stagers being left high and dry by these other courses that are really expensive and still not prepare the students for real-life home staging business problems. Because of this podcast and blog that I write about the business of home staging, I get asked the same basic questions over and over again that should already been covered by these expensive courses. So, in this jam-packed online course, we're going to go over systems, contracts, pricing, proposals, inventory, marketing, technology, and everything you'll need to start getting clients. I'm going to show you the behind the scenes of how I have built my home staging business from the ground up, including worksheets, systems, scripts, and workflow that I have developed to build a book-solid home staging business. You're also going to be able to see my pricing proposal, contracts, and basically every template I've ever created and used in my six-figure home staging business. We're going to launch this course officially in the late July or early August this year. You can find out more information about this course by going to our website at stagemore.com/six-figure-floor-plan. Again, that website is stagemore.com/six-figure-floor-plan. I'm also going to put a link in the show notes so you can find out for more information. Hey guys, welcome back to Season 6, Episode 2. On today's show, I have Helen Barlett, who's this amazing top-producing stager whose work is absolutely beautiful. What's really impressive is that she is a one-woman show. This woman is basically a total rockstar and a machine. She has been staging since 2011 and have won numerous awards in Vacant Home Staging, Occupied Staging and Redesign work. She was recently named as one of the top 200 influencers in the design industry for 2017. Helen has an extensive amount of knowledge regarding to what makes staging work and the benefits not only to sellers but also to buyers and real estate agents as well. She stages approximately 100 to 120 homes a year by doing owner-occupied homes, vacant homes, and consultations. Helen also recently co-authored a home staging book called Home Staging: The Power That Sells Real Estate. This book is a guide for homeowners thinking about selling their homes, real estate agents, and anyone thinking about a home staging career. It gives great information, advice, and tips on how to sell your home for top dollars in the shortest amount of time. I'm going to put a link of that book in the show notes as well if you're interested in ordering Helen's book. And just a few quick updates. We're in the process of selling everything in the warehouse in our studio in South San Francisco. And that ranges from home furnishing, artwork, accessories, kitchen stuff like plates, all the goodies, accent pillows, sleeping pillows, all that stuff. So if you want to buy some furniture and home goods, please let us know. You can contact me through the contact form on our website or through the show notes. And as you know, our six-figure 4-point course is now officially pre-selling. And if you buy the course right now, you'll also get 3 one-on-one sessions with me, which is valued at $825. You also get $400 off the course right now. So that is a total saving of $1,225 to you. And this is only available during the pre-sale period. And once I sell the limited spots, the price is going to go up. So without further ado, let's start the show. Today. I really appreciate it. Especially I know with the stager that you're doing, the volume you're doing, you must be very busy.
You know what, I'm still basically a one-woman show, so I am busy every single day, and I work like 7 days a week, and that's not good for anyone to do. But I'm at the point where there's got to be some growth and some changes in my business to keep up at this pace, for sure. So you think you can do it all, and then you realize you really can't and function in a normal life. So I'm at that point for sure.
I'm really amazed you're a one-woman show, though. I feel like I need to get you back on the show to do a second interview because I'm actually working on a show just for home stagers about running their businesses and stuff because some of the stuff I read on the message boards kind of make me very angry because I feel like a lot of times people have no idea what they're getting themselves into. It's heartbreaking, but at the same time, it's also hard for the consumers because they don't know, and it's just going to hurt the industry in general if we don't do something about it.
Absolutely, absolutely. And with that, you know, with growing your business, too, there's cost involved, and I think if everybody's kind of at the same level with, you know, their charges and what it costs to stage a home, I think it's going to be a lot easier for the public to be more accepting of what we do instead of turning away jobs because somebody else does it for practically nothing. You know what I mean? So when you're a professional business person, you've got a lot of expenses that incur with that business. You know, your inventory, your warehousing, all these things that people don't understand that have to be part of the cost of staging, unless, you know, you're doing it by hobby or a friend of a friend, which I hear all the time. You know, people will say you're charging so much more. Well, I'm running a business, and anybody who's running a business has costs to incur and overhead to take care of. So, yeah, that part gets frustrating with me, too, that I don't think people realize, you know, what professional services cost.
I know that's really frustrating. I think it's one of the major problem, I think, with somebody like in our industry, and also I feel like in real estate in general, because I think in general real estate people just have this reputation of being really cheap. And it is understandable because sellers, they feel like, well, I'm selling my house. I don't really want to put more money into it. So how do you deal with pricing rejections like that when seller just was like, I don't really think I should put more money into this, something I'm getting rid of?
Well, yeah, I come across that all the time, and I think a lot of people feel that way. You know, first of all, they're paying a real estate commission, which is several thousands of dollars, and they think, I don't want to put money into a house that I'm leaving. I want my money for the new house. So part of my goal is to help educate them that the cost of home staging is not just the cost to bring stuff in, but it takes into consideration that if you don't make these changes and you don't make these updates and you don't stage your home, chances are your home's going to sit on the market longer. So you've got incurred costs with holding fees. You know, you're paying your mortgage longer, you're paying your taxes longer, you're paying your insurance longer. And, you know, the stats that RISA puts out, you know, show and prove that staged homes typically sell for 7 to 10% more than an unstaged home. So if you're going to get more money and shorter time on the market, that's what my goal is, to show the homeowner that it's not just the cost of staging. With not staging their home, they are definitely leaving money on the table one way or the other. They either have to put it out up front to pay for staging, or they'll end up paying for it because it's going to take longer to sell, or somebody will come in and lowball because things weren't updated or taken care of, and buyers look at that as an expense that they're going to have to incur, and they don't want to, so they'll offer less. So there's always a cost. So, again, my goal is to just try to let them know up front, it's not just the dollar amount that I'm saying is what it's going to cost to come in and stage your home. There's so much more to it than just that.
Yeah, I totally agree with that, because the thing is that if the sellers are willing to make improvements, it's going to lower their chance significantly to get a profitable sale.
Because buyers today are picky. They're going to say, oh, I don't need a turnkey home, but they still want a turnkey home. And then
absolutely.
And then the more money buyers have to put into the new house, the less likely they will want to put in an offer if they come across a home that basically is almost turnkey. So I think sellers don't realize nowadays it's really competitions. And I see that in hot market as well. The seller's like, well, I'm going to sell regardless. But it's a difference between you can sell for more money and a faster sale versus you're going to sit on the market longer and people, like, then you incur more chances where people can negotiate down that pricing.
Absolutely. And what we found, too, is that buyers actually, when the home has been updated, we know buyers are actually willing to pay more for a home that's move-in ready. Because think about this, Cindy. Think about how busy people are today. You know, they buy a house. They don't want to come in and have to tear it up or replace carpeting or find a painter or find a carpenter or find somebody to do that. Their lives are so busy with jobs and kids and soccer and baseball and all the things that they're running around doing. If the home is done in a way that's going to be acceptable or even better to their liking, they're willing to pay for that. And that's what we found. You know, buyers really are, because of the convenience factor. I mean, everybody wants everything right away these days. And so if your home is ready for your demographic buyer, chances are somebody's going to be willing to pay for that. So
exactly. So let's talk about your business a little bit and yourself. So how did you get started in real estate?
Well, I actually started my home staging business in 2011 after losing a corporate job because of the downfall in the economy. And what I found was, even though I had a background in business and I felt I had so much to offer any business in sales or marketing, which is where most of my background was, for 10 years, I had worked in the real estate field working at title companies. I started off literally as a gopher there and worked my way up to managing an office. The next 10 years after that, because of my husband's job move, I ended up opening a little retail store and interior design business where I got that experience. And then again, after another job change for my husband, ended up moving here to Kansas City where I currently live and found myself trying to reinvent myself again, getting a job, and I ended up in sales and marketing. Well, after all those years of working, I ended up losing my job because of the crash in the economy, and realized that it was very difficult still. Companies were still not hiring, but I felt like I had so much to offer. And I looked at myself and I thought, it's time to reinvent myself again, basically. And I started watching these shows on HGTV, and it was a new buzzword for me, all this stuff on home staging. And I kept watching these shows, and I realized home staging is really a sales and marketing job. And boy, does it help if you understand real estate and even have a little bit of a sense of design. And it was like a light bulb went off. And I knew I had been working decades to be a home stager, and I didn't even know it because my background fits perfectly into what I do now. I know real estate, I know interior design, I know sales and marketing, and that's what home staging is. And I feel very fortunate that I finally figured out where I was meant to be because I really believe that now.
I think that is amazing. Oh, my God. Wow. It's amazing. I think that's so great that you have so much knowledge about how real estate industry works. One of the things I also really frustrates me is I think a lot of stagers don't understand how real estate industry works when they get into the business. So they don't really know how to communicate with realtors per se. I myself was a real estate agent before a home stager, so I understood how the market worked. And that actually was very beneficial of becoming a home stager because then you know how to talk to a real estate agent, you know what they're going through and what their needs are.
Absolutely. And you know how important it is for them to get to that closing. So you do everything you can to help make that happen because I always feel, my home staging is not about glorifying anything I do. I'm hired to make somebody else look good. I'm hired to make that real estate agent look good. I'm hired to make that homeowner's house look good. And that's the bottom line. When they're all at that closing and everybody's happy, then I've done my job and I feel good about it. So, there are things beyond your control, but you do as much as you can to make that happen. And working with real estate agents gave me a great understanding of how that business works. Absolutely.
I think that is just fantastic. I think that is really amazing, and I think that is a really great attitude to have as a business owner, especially as a home stager, because I definitely see sometimes I do sense sometimes some stagers need an attitude adjustment. I'm sorry to be very direct about this, but I'm like,
no, I
I
agree.
can say whatever I want, technically. It's sometimes, yeah, I think some stagers come off very egotistic and about, like, what they do is absolutely right compared to what the clients feel what they should be doing. I mean, there is a fine line, I think, with that, but sometimes we can come off as too aggressive. And I definitely work with real estate agents who have worked with that kind of stagers where they felt that they're almost bullied into certain kind of home presentation decision kind of thing. And it just kind of leave a bad taste in the client's mouth, to be honest. So I'm really happy to hear you say that. It's like we are here to do a job to help someone else and make them look good. And I think that is great.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's a matter of earning their trust and respect. And then I think those issues where, you know, they might question something, when you can explain back to them the reason you're doing something and it makes sense to them, there is a mutual level of respect and you move forward on that level. And I think that's great. So it shouldn't be, you know, do it my way, that's the only way. I would rather say, well, let me explain to you why I'm doing this, because I've had people say, well, I don't think you should do this. And I would say to them, this is why. You want people to respect you as a professional and really listen to what you're saying. But I think if you can give them a reason why you're doing certain things, and they have an understanding of it, they gain a lot more respect for you and what you're doing, and they start to question less and less, which is good.
Yeah, no, I'm a firm believer of that, because I think nowadays trust is so important, especially for what we do, because we do no store. I mean, it's essentially you can just pack up and leave overnight.
Yeah.
Like your client can't find you, basically. And so there's a tremendous amount of trust involved, especially you're working in someone's home. And it freaks me out when I read stagers who are really excited to get their first job, for example, but they have no insurance or they don't know if they need to sign a contract with a client. I mean, that is kind of alarming. Granted, most of your first client usually are friends and family, but still, it's something that, as a new stager, that's something that they definitely need to establish before they go out there and start getting projects. So,
absolutely. And that, too, you know, having the insurance, having a license, having all that those professional credentials gives you the credibility that your client really will feel good about too. So, yeah, I've seen that too. And I know when they first get started, they don't even know what they're getting into. It's kind of like the business as a whole. I meet so many people who say to me, oh, I'd love to do what you're doing. It must be so fun shopping all the time. And that's just a small part of what we do. You know, that's a small part. And, you know, and sometimes that's not fun either, because when you have to have certain things and you spend all this time driving and looking and, you know, just nonstop trying to find the one thing that you need, that's not fun. That can be pressure sometimes. So I think there is a great misunderstanding of what our business really entails. It's not just fun and decorating. It's a very small part of it. We're actually running a business. It happens to be a business I think most people who are in it really love, and so the decorating and the shopping part of it becomes fun for them, but the bottom line is it's still a business that you're running, just like any other business.
I totally agree with that. I think 80% of my work actually involves on administrative or, you know, talking to clients and marketing, and only a very small percentage of my job is actually staging their house. And I totally agree on the shopping part. I mean, I think that seems like really fun when people see it on television. But when you are at the end of the day and you've been to like 5 stores and your car is jammed full of stuff, and you still have to run to Target to buy that one thing, it kills you.
It does.
Sometimes on shopping day, they're just like trash over my car because I basically eat lunch, breakfast, and dinner in my car.
We all do that. We all do that, Cindy. I can't even begin to tell you what kind of dried food is probably on the bottom of my floor of my car right now as we speak. So, yeah. It's a rough life sometimes. So.
Exactly. And then, so can you tell us a little bit about your market in your area? Like, what are you usually working with most of the time?
Sure. Well, I am in the Kansas City area, and people always ask, is it Kansas City, Kansas, or Kansas City, Missouri? It's actually one big city divided by the state line. So there is both sides of the state line, and I would say I work both sides of the state line and all the suburbs around here as well. I do owner-occupied stagings. Actually, that's what I started off doing, just doing owner-occupied, because it's actually what I thought I only wanted to do. You know, I live in a post-World War II Little Cape Cod, excuse me, and so it's pretty small. You know, an older house is about 80 years old, small basement, and not a whole lot of room. And I remember my husband asking me, what are you going to do with all the stuff you get if you're going to go into this business? And I assured him I would not be buying stuff. I assured him I was only going to be doing owner-occupied, and I was only going to make their home look better with their stuff. And if they needed stuff, I would help them find it, get it, or figure something out. And slowly, over the months, after I started doing a couple of owner-occupied homes, somebody had asked me if I could do one small room. And I thought to myself, well, what harm would it be to have an extra sofa, right? An extra chair, an extra coffee table. And I really thought that I didn't want to get into that, but I thought it wouldn't be the bad thing just to have that in my inventory if I needed it as an emergency or something. So I ended up doing a very small project. It was my first vacant, and they only wanted one room done. And that house had been on the market for about 6 months with no offers and no interest. And I remember I staged it on a Thursday. The one room, it was a family room. It was a beautiful home. It had this Colorado lodgy feel to it. So I gave it this rustic feel, you know, with this great big heavy looking coffee table and, you know, a nice cowhide on the floor and just a, you know, big beautiful stone fireplace. It all played together so beautifully. So a couple came in 3 days later after it was staged to an open house and ended up sitting there for about 3 hours on my sofa talking to the real estate agent, and they ended up buying that house. And so she was thrilled. And she told another real estate agent who then called me and said, hey, can you do that for me? Can you come to this house and help me out? And I thought to myself, I'll just use the same stuff because I don't want to buy stuff. And so I went to look at her house, and I had verbally committed, sure, I can do that for you. But what I didn't realize when I got to her house was it was a whole different type of house. Not only that, it was more than just one room. She needed a living room and a family room done. She needed a dining room and a kitchen. It was like, oh, my gosh, now I need 4 rooms of furniture, and I barely have one. And so that's how that snowball started for me. I just kept saying to people, sure, I can do it, because they had seen my work. And, you know, this business is a big referral-based business. It took me 9 months to get my first job, Cindy, and I almost gave up because I was losing a lot of faith in myself and a lot of confidence. But I knew I could do it, but it was like nobody else believed I could. And after I got my first job, it was actually an owner-occupied. It went well. That's what kept me going. And then I slowly snowballed into the vacant, not knowing I would end up 6 years later with a huge warehouse filled with stuff. And now primarily, I would say I probably do about 60% vacants and 40%, maybe 30% owner-occupied, and about 10% redesign work. So I do it all, thinking I was just going to like stick myself into this one hole, this one area, become great at that, but it just doesn't work that way. And I'm glad, because it's really opened me up to so many opportunities and so many great people that I've had the chance to work with. And I've pushed myself beyond what I thought I could do at times. I mean, I've had people ask me to bid on homes that I would walk into, and I would think, I have no idea. It was like, it was really bad. You know, the layout, the design, the miracle that they were expecting, I wasn't sure I could pull it off, and I kept pushing myself. Every time I was scared to do a job, I just kept pushing myself to take on that challenge and do it. And it's been a great thing, because, you know, I'm never stagnant. I keep looking for the next way to push myself and the next way to grow, the next way to get better. And that gives you a lot of confidence, knowing I actually feel there's probably not a house here in Kansas City that I couldn't take on now. And a few years ago, several of them intimidated me. And now I think I want the ones that are hard. I want the ones that are challenging. I want to be known as the person who can help make that one sell. So I love that.
I think that's great, and I also think that's how you kind of differentiate yourself from maybe the other stagers who are cheap and don't necessarily know how to deal with these type of homes are more difficult? Because I think that's really where our experience comes from.
Oh, absolutely. It does. It really does. The market here in Kansas City, unlike the East or the West Coast, is pretty conservative, I would say. It's still, I think, a seller's market right now, because inventory is low, but we never really hit the highs and the lows like the East and the West Coast. We just kind of maintained. The recession did hurt values for a little while, but I think everything has pretty much bounced back now. But we didn't have the extremes that the East or the West Coast has. And one thing that differentiates Kansas City from a lot of other markets in this country is that we don't really have any big national builders here. I don't know if you've got like Pulte out in California or Horton Homes or any of those that, I can't even think of who they are because I'm not in that market anymore. But yeah, we don't have any national builders here. We've got a lot of like mom and pop builders. We've got a lot of smaller companies. It's a very interesting market here. I think we've got over 2,000 builders in the Kansas City Home Builders Association, and that's a lot of builders. But the average builder in this area will build about 6 to 8 homes, I heard. So, and that's the average. There are some who do less, some who do more.
That's pretty cool. I actually think it's nicer to work with smaller and more independent builders because it's nicer to develop your relationship that way.
Sure. And it keeps you more creative because they're all doing their own thing and they don't want the same look. Whereas sometimes you might get stuck with like a big national builder and they've got the same house, the same look, and, they like it. It's working for them. So it helps them to market and sell their homes, and that's great. But there might not be a lot of creativity for you in it. So I do like it. I mean, like I said, I push myself all the time and try to do things that are different. And I don't want to be bored with my own work, so I have to try to make it, look interesting. And I do that for my clients as well as myself.
I think that's really awesome. And so how do you create a warm and welcoming home through staging?
Well, I think, when a buyer walks into a home, there has to be an emotional connection for them. There absolutely has to be. So when they walk into the home, they have to feel that it is warm and welcoming. They have to have a sense of calm and comfort. And we do that by using the right colors, a lot of neutrals. Neutral backgrounds, there's a reason that home stagers use neutral colors, and that's because it really makes the space feel calm and at ease and at peace. If you walk into a space that has bright or jarring colors, people are so sensitive to colors. Colors create reactions. I did a study years ago on color theory, and it was so interesting to me, that they use the color pink in prisons because it's a calming color. Neutrals are calming colors. Red is a very stimulating color, which is why a lot of restaurants use it, because it stimulates the appetite. And so when you think about colors play a huge part in how a home feels warm and welcoming, because if you walk in and you're at ease immediately, that allows the buyer to really take in the space. When we stage, another thing that I think is really important to make a home feel warm and welcoming is to create a great flow through the house. You don't want to walk, around furniture or through rooms that you can't get back through. The space, the floor, the flow of the room has to be open so a buyer can go through there with ease. And, another really, really important thing is to have as much balance or symmetry in the house as possible. That's another thing. You walk into a room, and when things feel balanced, your eyes can relax and your mind can take in the whole space without it being jarred or feeling restless. I don't know if you've ever walked into a room where there was stuff all over the place and you don't even know what to look at first. As a buyer, all they want to do is keep walking through that room because they're uncomfortable in there. They don't want to be there. So I think it's a combination of a lot of things, but importantly, color, the space having a clear flow, so getting rid of things that don't belong there, getting rid of too much stuff, even like a lot of small things, knickknacks, collections, things like that. Buyers get sensory overload, and that's not relaxing to them. So when they come into a room or a home that feels relaxed they're able to take it in and they linger in the space longer. And those are the buyers who end up buying these homes because they're really taking it in on a level where they're connecting with it emotionally. And that has to happen. And you know what, Cindy, that emotional connection typically happens within 15 seconds of walking through the front door. That's how important it is, because within that first 15 seconds, they're actually deciding, yes, this is the house for me, or no, this isn't going to work. So
that's really amazing. Oh my gosh. So what do you think are some of the biggest misconceptions when it comes to home staging?
Well, you know, I think people think they don't want to hire a home stager for a lot of reasons. Number one, they think it's expensive, which is crazy, because whatever a home stager is going to charge you is always less than a price reduction. It's always less than your house lingering on the market longer than it needs to. That's a huge misconception. They don't take into consideration the actual cost of not staging their house, which is the cost of home staging. I think another thing that homeowners have a misconception about is they feel like their house doesn't need to be staged. They think a buyer can overlook certain things, or they can make it their own. Or, you know, let's say it's vacant. They can say it'll look bigger. They can picture their own things in there. And what we know for sure is 9 out of 10 buyers can't visualize. So if the house is empty, they're losing a lot of buyers just because the space is empty. If they think, you know, a buyer can figure out on their own how their purple kitchen will look better in a different color, no, they can't. They get jarred by that color. They get restless. They're not taking it in. They're so distracted by that. They're not thinking about how they can make it work. They don't even know. I mean, think about all the people who call us as home stagers for color consultations. So many people can't figure that out. So if it's all done for them, if it's neutral, then that doesn't even become an issue. You know, another misconception that I think homeowners have, too, is they love their home. They're so emotionally connected to it. There's nothing wrong with it in their mind. And the problem with that is after you live in your home for so many years, you get used to things that may be a problem for a buyer. You know, I know when I moved into my home that I live in, I've been here for 16 years now. And when I first moved in, I thought to myself, oh, my gosh, I can't live with that bathroom. It's disgusting. It's gross. It took me 11 years to change it. I mean, so had I not changed it, let's say I had to sell my house before the 11 years, then I would have, you know, I got used to living with it looking bad. And it didn't bother me as much as it did when I first moved. And that's what happens. A lot of homeowners just kind of get used to things. And they don't realize the things that they hated that they never changed could be deal breakers for the buyer. And a big thing is, you know, even a home that looks pretty, they think, you know, I had it professionally decorated. I don't need to have it staged. That's a huge misconception, too, because a beautifully decorated home, like you go into them, these model homes that are on tour all the time, you're so caught up in the decorating that you're not really looking at the house. And that's a problem. So I always tell people, you know, the big difference between a well-decorated home and a well-staged home is that in a decorated home, you walk in and you learn about the people who live there. You see what they like. You see how they've lived. You see what's important to them. With a well-staged home, you walk in, you notice the beautiful architectural features of the house. You notice the flow of the rooms. You notice the space. You notice how it's going to work for you. So there's a big difference. So a decorated home is not a well-staged home at all. So those are some of the 4 big ones, I would think.
I love that. I think it's such a big thing, a big misconception. People just can't understand why it's different between decorating and home staging. Yeah. You're targeting completely different people. I mean, decorating is only you, really. But for staging, is you want to appeal to a really broad range of people, and that's why these two don't really mix in a lot of ways.
Yeah. Yep, you're absolutely right.
So how do you figure out the demographics of the potential buyers?
Well, I take it into consideration a lot of things. First, the location of the property. I mean, is it downtown? Is it more a suburban area? That kind of breaks it up for you very quickly. And, you know, you want to see are you close to schools? Is this a neighborhood where there's going to be younger families? Is this a neighborhood where it's 55 and over, where they're like looking for maintenance-free living? You take into consideration all those things, and as well as the architecture of the house. I mean, you know, if you're in a modern loft downtown, that could be a young buyer. That could be, you know, people who are wanting to downsize and all of a sudden get rid of their traditional lifestyle, which I see all the time happening. So, the demographic really focuses on a lot of things: the location, the style of the home, the amenities in the area, and what kind of people want to live there. And I think once you know that, you can really target the way you stage it with the furnishings, the look, the style, whether it's minimalistic, whether it's modern, whether it's more traditional. You can't bring modern furniture into a Tuscan-style home and make that work and have a middle-aged buyer think that's how they want to live. You just can't do that. You really have to understand so many things that come into consideration, when you decide on what the demographic is. Any research, too. I mean, you can get research online, find out what the median age of the buyer is, what the income is. The more research you know, the more you can really hit that target.
That's awesome. Yeah, I think research is such a big part of staging, and I think a lot of sellers don't realize that, especially when they're staging their own home for sale, and they don't understand the buyer because they're staging based on how they would like it. But the thing is, if you're selling a house, if you've been living in a house for the past 10 years, chances are you're not the target buyer in that neighborhood anymore because you're moving out. So yeah.
That's so true. You know what, Cindy, I'm a prime example in my own neighborhood. Like I said, I've been here for 16 years, and I'll take a walk through my neighborhood, and I ask myself all the time, when did I turn into the old person in this neighborhood? Because when my house goes up for sale, I know it's younger families who want to live here. I'm not even a demographic buyer in my own neighborhood anymore because I turned into the old person. And that, but I know that. And so I have to explain this if I'm working in my own neighborhood, telling these people, we have to make your house feel younger and fresher, and they don't understand because I live here too. But that doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what I want or how I live. When I'm ready to sell my house, it's going to appeal to a much younger family. It has to. If I want top dollar and I want it to sell quickly, it has to appeal to the demographic market.
I agree with that. And so when we're selling, a lot of times we talk about highlighting the positive and attractive architecture details in the home. Mm-hmm. But as an experienced stager, I'm sure you've seen unattractive and negative architectural details in the home. Like, for example, the shape of the room might be irregular, not a rectangle, or there might be a big air vent sticking out in the middle of the ceiling. Like, what do you do usually when you encounter situations like that?
Well, like you said, Cindy, it's really important to focus on the positive things because there's always something that's not quite right in a house. So I think if you really create an area that has a focal point detracting away from whatever is unattractive, and you create a purpose for that space. You create an area where people can visualize themselves living there. It helps to detract away from whatever is unattractive. I did a house for a flipper here in Kansas City several years ago, and it was an old house. It was probably about 80 years old again, and he opened up the whole attic floor and he wanted to create a master suite. But part of the problem was the stairway came right up into the center of the room, and it was so awkward. Going in there, you didn't even know where to put a bed because you had basically a room that was probably about 20 feet wide by 30 feet long with a big stairway right in the middle of it. So he had it on the market for about 60 days. He had viewers every day because it was in a great area and people wanted to see it. It was very charming from the outside, but once they got upstairs, they all said to him, I don't know what to do with this space. I don't even know how to make a bed work in here. So he called me and asked me if I would stage that upstairs area for him. And I was even stumped when I first looked at it, but I remember taking pictures and coming back and analyzing it and doing a floor plan and figuring out what I could do. I ended up creating 4 different zones in that upstairs space. One was where the bed was for sleeping. One was like a little chair for sitting or reading. One was a desk for doing any, business or work or whatever. And then another area where the dresser was. And I can tell you, you know what, Cindy, I staged that house on a Saturday morning. I finished about 12 o'clock. And as I was packing up, there was a buyer coming in to look at it. He ended up buying it, and his comment was he bought it because he fell in love with that upstairs very awkward space that about 80 other people didn't know what to do with. So once it was staged, and again, it was just about focusing on how big that space was, creating nice little areas that showed a purpose and made it work. Yeah, there's still the stairway right in the middle of it, but you know what? When you can show a buyer how to make it work, that helps. That's what's going to make it sell.
I love that. I love that story. It's such a great story because I think a lot of home staging really is teaching buyers on how to use the space. I'm not saying buyers lack of imagination, but sometimes with a trickier floor plan, it is really difficult, even with seasoned home stagers. Sometimes we look at it, we're like, I have to think about this. And go home and do a little bit of research kind of thing. Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. And so that's something, we always talk about home staging benefiting the sellers for a quicker sale and higher dollar. But here, in this case, it benefited the buyers because the buyers didn't know what to do. So home staging is twofold. It's going to help the buyers and the sellers.
Exactly. And I love that because I think sometimes we get pushback from buyer's agent. Because a few years ago, there was an article published by, I think, the Association of Buyer's Agent, and they said that staging, it was basically this way of deceiving buyers to make them put more money into the offer. Mm-hmm. I obviously do not agree with that because I think we're not in the business of deceiving people. We're in the business of marketing and presenting the home in the best light possible so home buyers can understand how they can move into the house and how they can make this their dream house. And it has nothing to do with deceiving anyone for money.
I agree with you completely on that, Cindy. That's almost absurd to think that that's something that we do. I don't do that myself. I know you don't do that. It would be no different if you were selling your car. Would you leave the French fries on the bottom of the floor and the Coke stain rings in the drink holder? No, you would clean it up. You would want to present it as best as you can to get top dollar. You're not deceiving anybody. You're just, presenting it, like you said, marketing it to get the highest price. That's what you want to do. It's like when you go in for a job interview, you take a shower, you put on a nice suit, you get dressed up. Does that mean that, you're a different person or you have a different work ethic because you're home in your sweatpants and slippers the rest of the day? I mean, it's all about marketing and presenting, like you said. Exactly. What it is.
Yeah. And then in staging, I love you talk about this in your story as well. We talk a lot about placing furniture, accessories, and artwork strategically. So what does that mean for you?
Well, it's so important when how furniture is actually placed in a home to make it to have a buyer connect with it and feel like it's the right space. When you walk into a home and you are blocked with furniture, have you ever walked into a home and you walk right into the back of a piece of furniture and then you have to walk around that furniture? That's not the best flow in that space. And when buyers feel physically blocked, they actually are emotionally blocked as well. And if they have to navigate around things to get through a room, it just doesn't feel like the right space for them. Like I said, buying a house for a buyer is very emotional. It's very psychological. They don't understand all this, but it just doesn't feel right. And so they keep building on that feeling. So the furniture has to feel open. When you walk into a room, you have to have a focal point created and the furniture placed around it or featured, so you look at that focal point. So there's a purpose in every room. So there's a focal point in every room. Even if there isn't an architectural focal point, you create one with maybe a piece of furniture or an interesting piece of art. Strategically placing the art and the accessories, that's important too. I walk into homes where pictures on walls are hung way too high or way too low. That throws the balance and the scale of the room off. It doesn't feel right. Again, it's a buyer thinking, I don't know what's wrong, but it just doesn't feel right. So when it's at the right eye level and, a room feels spacious and big, those are things that make a buyer feel like they're really finding a great opportunity and a great home for themselves. You walk into a room that's got a lot of small accessories or collections. Not only are those distracting, but like I said earlier, it becomes sensory overload. So by placing accessories that are bigger, I always tell people you don't need a lot. You just need more impactful pieces. You need pieces that will, get your attention, that work within the space. You don't need to have, 50 clowns out or 100 beer cans or what. I mean, I've seen it all. And it's like putting those things away, having the right accessories, the right art, the right flow through the space. That's huge in how, a space works for a buyer and makes it feel like it's the right space. I mean, I've seen it way too many times. It's just not comfortable when you walk into a space and you don't know which way to go and, the furniture's not right. There's too much to look at. Buyers don't stay in rooms like that very long. And if they don't stay in rooms like that very long, they're not buying rooms like that or houses like that.
I agree. And so if homeowners doesn't have enough budget, time, or resource to stage an entire house, what are some recommendations you have for them to get the house ready for sale?
Well, there's always something they can do, even if they don't have any money at all. And what they can focus on is they can always clean up their house. I mean, you'd be surprised at how many homes that we all go into that, and I'm not being critical of anybody's housekeeping, but sometimes when there's like hair on the rugs and mud and it's just filthy, it costs nothing to get a bucket of water and soap and clean that up. It costs nothing to pull things out of drawers and closets and pack them away or donate them or get rid of them. By opening up your closets and your drawers and showing more space and that your home works, that's going to help a buyer like the space too. I said earlier, buyers decide within 15 seconds of walking through the front door. So if you have limited money, look at those spaces. That's where the buyer's making the decision to buy a house. If you're handy and you can do some work yourself, changing the color of the room, paint, which has one of the biggest impacts ever. A gallon of paint is $30. If you can paint yourself, you can make a huge difference by things like that. If you've got old or worn or dated furniture that's distracting, remove that. These are things that buyers can do themselves that don't cost them a penny. It's always good to have or at least consider at least getting a consultation so you get that unbiased opinion too, because they may not realize their furniture is so old or distracting, and sometimes removing that is better than not having it there. If you've got an old worn rocking chair with tears and stains, but it's your family favorite and you love cuddling with the kids in it, but you know what? It's an eyesore to anybody walking in your house. You may not realize that, but by even considering a consultation, and they average anywhere from, I would say, $75 to $350 an hour average through the United States. I know here in Kansas City it might be somewhere around $100 an hour. To spend $100 asking somebody, what should I concentrate on? What should I do? That money will come back to you tenfold at least.
That's great. And in your opinion, what are some of the biggest challenges when it comes to staging a house that homeowners still live in?
Well, you know what? We say this all the time. Marketing your home is not the same as living in it, for sure. It's tough. I mean, I know it's a stressful situation. Families, especially who have kids, you have to pick up after yourselves every day. Laundry has to be done. I tell homeowners all the time, get your stuff out of the shower. Your bathroom should feel like a hotel. It should feel like a spa. You don't want to walk into somebody's bathroom and see, worn soap and razor blades and, squishy washcloths and stuff like that hanging all over. You want to walk in and not think about somebody else who's just been in there if you're thinking about this being your potential house. So to live that way, it's stressful. On the other hand, I always tell my clients that if you listen to these things and you make these changes and you pick up and you pick up after yourself and your home shows the best it can every single time, chances are it's going to sell quickly. And this nightmare, for lack of a better word, because it's hard. I've done it myself. I've lived in 5 homes that I've sold over the years when I was moving, and it is hard to live that way. It's tough, and it's a sacrifice. Even little things like if a trash can sitting out in the kitchen, I always tell a seller, a homeowner, is there any place we can move that? Well, I need my trash here, I know, but when it's right in the middle of your kitchen floor, it shows a buyer there's no room for a trash can, and that might be something that they don't like. So if you put a small one under your kitchen sink and maybe take it out every day instead of every 2 days, live with that temporarily until your house is sold, because living in your home is so much different than marketing it. Even when I move furniture around, somebody will tell me, well, I can't see the TV that well. I understand, but the point is this beautiful fireplace is the focal point, and that's what we want a buyer to see. We don't want them looking at the back of your recliner facing the TV, So it's hard on them, but I try to assure them that it's all meant for their good and, showing a buyer the full potential of the space, because like I said, when a buyer knows that house is going to work for them and it's ready for them, they're willing to pay for that. They want to have a home that's going to work for them. They get tired of looking. I don't know of any buyer who wants to keep looking and looking and looking and looking. They want to find the house that works for them.
That's great. And when you first walk into a homeowner's home to help them organize their home for sale, what are some of the things that you're looking for?
Well, some of the most important things I always tell homeowners that I think there are three things that are important to buyers when they walk into the house that they need to address. First is the flow of how the rooms work. Can you go through each room with ease? Does each room have a purpose? Is the furniture set up to the best of its capability? Also, I look at the space in each room. Is there anything in that room that doesn't absolutely need to be there, that it needs to be removed, like baskets on the floor, sometimes way too many plants, little oddball tables that don't need to be there, anything that doesn't serve a purpose. In showing that space, I ask them to remove it because I say once we free this floor space, we're freeing square footage in your home. Your room opens up. It feels bigger. And when the room feels bigger and a buyer feels like they're getting more, they're willing to pay more. So that's one big thing. You know, the room itself, how it flows, what's in there, the purpose of the room, extra things out of there. Another thing the second thing that's really important to buyers is the amount of natural light. And I know some homes you can't help the way they are situated with lack of sun or whatever. But in every room when your home is being shown or photographed, every window treatment should be as open as fully as possible. Every light should be on. Every lamp should be on. As much light needs to come into that space as possible. Because I don't know if you've been in a home, Cindy, where it's dark and dreary. All you want to do is get out. But when it feels light and bright, it makes buyers happy. And they want to stay there, and it feels good. And like I said, it all goes back to that emotional and psychological feeling. When they feel good in that space, they're going to stay. So the room itself, the light, and like I said, the flow of how it all works. Those are things that are so important to buyers, and those are the things that I want every seller to focus on. So when a buyer walks in, and none of those things cost money. None of those things cost money. You know, turn maybe a light bulb. If your light bulbs are burned out, you need new light bulbs. But you've got to create spaces that show a purpose, that show as much real estate as possible, and have as much light as possible in your space.
I love that. And so how do you help homeowners to go through a process of what to keep and what to remove for staging?
Well, that can be difficult at times because they're so personally attached to things. And so what I try to do is when I know it's a piece that is distracting and it really needs to be removed from the space, but yet it's very personal to them, I try to take away from the seller that it's personal insult of any sort. What I try to do is I focus on the buyers. I say to them, you know, this old rocking chair from Granny, it's beautiful and it needs to be packed and used and packed up and put in your next house for sure, absolutely. But your buyer, when they come in, they're going to be young. They're going to want to see more modern things. I don't want this to be a distraction to them. You know, if they've got personal collections, I've seen it, dolls and bells and clowns and things like that. I tell them again, these things, as great as they are, you don't want a buyer coming in and saying, oh, my grandmother had a bell that looked just like that. Because when your buyer is distracted with your collections, they're not focusing on your house. And when they're not focusing on your house, they're not going to buy your house. So I try to explain it and put it all on what the buyer expects. And when they understand it that way, they are more comfortable packing things away that they might not have wanted to. You know, so we go through and we look at what needs to stay to make the room function and show purpose. If it doesn't need to stay, I try to let them know that it really is about what we have to do for the buyer. And that always seems to work because I'm being respectful of their things. I'm not saying, oh God, this is so old, so bad, so worn, it's got to go. I turn it around and say, this is not what your buyer's expecting. We have to change this. And they're fine with that. And, you know, I always assure them, in your next house, use this. This is going to be great. It's so nice that you can pack up your bells right now and put them in a box for safekeeping and have them at your next house and put them out, all those special ones to you, you know. So they're fine with that, actually.
Yeah, I think exactly. I think a lot of times people are so emotionally attached to their stuff, but they don't realize that it's not something that buyers necessarily need for the home staging process. Like, staging is really about to appeal to the buyers, and it's not so much about what the sellers want. And I think sellers sometimes forget that they're going to be moving to a new house and they can do this exact, like, the exact decorating style, whatever it is that they're attached to in their new home. But by not letting you do what you're supposed to do for home staging, they're actually delaying that whole entire process, which can be heartbreaking if you think about it. So
yeah, absolutely, you're right.
And how do you determine the color palette when you're planning for the staging of the home?
Well, I said earlier that neutral colors, we always try to focus on neutrals for several reasons. Number one, because they become calming backgrounds. You walk into a neutral room, you can stand there and look at it, and it works. There is not one buyer out there who will say, I can't live with this beige or gray or white or whatever that neutral is. But you know what? They do come in and they say, oh, my God, that yellow is hideous. I can't stand that. I could not live with that. Color creates a reaction. And so you want to use neutrals in your space for that reason, plus the fact that when a room is an interesting or bold color, buyers can't get beyond that color. They're not focusing on anything else. They're still looking at that, wonder, oh, my God, why would somebody paint it this color? Why would they do this? You don't want that. You want a buyer coming in with a neutral background for sure. As far as adding color to the palette of home staging, I always do that in my art and accessories. You can take some very neutral pieces of furniture and really make it interesting and fun by the colors you use. And the colors you use depend on who your demographic is. If it's a younger demographic, you can go with brighter pops of color. If it's more of a middle-aged, not middle-aged, but maybe a young family in their 30s or 40s, you want the look that they're going for. And for lack of a better word, they like a lot of those real subdued neutrals that you see like at Pottery Barn and Restoration Hardware. They like those soothing colors, so you do that. So you kind of, again, it goes back to who your demographic buyer is. But for the most part, the color palette should always be neutral. Add the color in the art, the accessories, plants bring in great texture. You can add texture in bringing in some interesting wood pieces. And if it's an owner-occupied, look at what they have. And if their furniture is, like I said, dated or a big floral pattern that might have been really popular in the 80s, we talk to them about maybe slip covering it. We talk to them about maybe putting a throw and some neutral pillows on it just to kind of break up some patterns and break up some colors that are harsher. It's harder with owner-occupied homes because you can't expect people to go out and get better-looking stuff so their house looks better. But in a vacant, it's much easier. You're starting with a clean palette. You can bring in whatever is right for that house. But with owner-occupied, there are ways by editing. That's a word I use all the time, editing. Let's remove some of these things. If you can remove some of the things that are distracting or too colorful, that helps too. I mean, I would never tell anybody to go out and buy new stuff because it's not going to work for their buyer. That's not being realistic. You have to work with as much as you can, and there are ways to kind of bring down the color. And sometimes, it might just be changing out a rug, and if it's a colorful dark rug, maybe bring in a lighter neutral, and that kind of helps with the lighter tones that are so popular today, too.
Yeah, I totally agree. I love that, actually. I think what you said really makes a lot of sense. Especially, I think sometimes it's hard when you're working with the homeowners and maybe they haven't updated their house for 40 years. Mm-hmm. But if they truly have no budget, you really have to work with what they've got. And a lot of it is editing. I think a huge part of what we do as creative professionals are actually about editing client style, especially working with occupied homes.
Right. And, I always think about how I would feel if someone like myself came into my home, if I wasn't a home stager myself and somebody came in and they expected me to change everything without explaining why, or just to have this expectation that my stuff is older, it's not right, I should have better stuff. I wouldn't like that. I would feel very offended personally. So I never talk to people that way. And, like you said, too, it's so important to work with what they have. Editing, getting rid of some of their stuff helps. When it's all older or distracting, just removing some of it helps,
Yeah, I totally agree. It was one of the last few projects I've staged as for a redesign project, and the client actually already has fairly nice stuff, but they just really need a lot of editing, really. When we live day to day, there's going to be a lot of stuff versus, somebody who doesn't live in a house where it's vacant, like a showroom kind of home. basically like a model home type of scenario. I mean, there's a reason why those look so good is because they don't have those kind of daily, kind of day-to-day clutter and personal items. Like there's not going to be papers over the countertop or like groceries, you know, in the kitchen cabinet kind of thing. Those are kind of the day-to-day stuff. That's why it's a huge difference when people see a stage home because they're like, oh my God, people live like this? No, actually, people don't live like that.
Yeah, no, nobody lives like that.
You live in a house where there's no toilet paper or toilet brush in your bathroom, basically, or there's like nothing in your kitchen cupboard. I mean, that's not realistic. So I think I love that you mentioned that. Like, I think as home staging professional, we're working with people and it's impacting their lifestyle. It can be drastically. It's really difficult to live in a stage home at times, and we have to be very like conscious and very empathetic about that.
Absolutely.
And so how about design style? Do you have a particular design style that you use all the time, or is it like based on individual homes?
You know, I would say there's such a variety of homes here in the Kansas City market. You know, of course, a lot of the newer trends and anything vacant, you know, whether it's done with a builder or a flipper, you see all the grays and that, you know, that modern farmhouse style is, I guess, what I call it, because it's very simple patterns, but yet it feels really updated and simplified and modern. You know, I think it really depends on the home. There are still some homes here. There are a lot of homes here that were very popular about 10 years ago, that Tuscan style. Do you have that out where you live too? You know what I mean? That really heavily ornate and carved, and buyers aren't really into that anymore. So, you know, in those homes, trying to bring all that detail down to a more minimalistic. I mean, we certainly can't go in with modern furniture, but you can go in with transitional pieces and play down some of the features in homes like that. And that's what you have to do. And, you know, I guess, you know, it depends on the home and there's no one formula that works for everything. Like I said, when I first started, I thought I could use the same sofa in every home I did, but that didn't work out either. And that was all through a huge learning process, that I have to be flexible enough and I have to know how to make that home stand out, and I have to know how to highlight that home. And if that means going out and getting a different piece or an interesting piece that will make that house stand out for whatever reason it needs to, then I do that. I wish it were a one-size-fits-all, but that never happens. I mean, that would make my life a lot easier, but that's not how it is. So I think you just have to be open to the home, the buyer, what you want to make stand out, what you want to play down, and, you know, just go with that.
That's a great answer. And so what is the one tip that you always give to a homeowner when it comes to staging your home for sale?
Well, I think the most important is to remind them that everything that we are doing for the buyer. And the reason for that is because we have the same goal, and that's for them to be able to sell their home quickly and to get top dollar. And I think if I can remind them of that, that's the whole purpose of what we're doing. But, you know, like I said, it's hard. It's hard sometimes for these homeowners to listen to somebody they are just meeting for the first time, coming in, telling them how to change the way they've lived for so many years. But I try to reassure them and remind them all the time that I'm not judging them. It's not personal. It's about selling quickly for top dollar and focusing on what their buyer wants. And, you know, I think that's the key to reminding them, because real estate has changed so much in the last 5 or 10 years, where it's so much different now to sell a home than it used to be. Years ago, you would sell your home as is and a buyer would figure it out. Today, with HGTV, the DIY channels, buyers have great expectations, and we don't want to lose a buyer because we don't want to make these changes. You know, however minimal they are, there's never been a home I've been in, Cindy, that couldn't benefit from some level of home staging, whether it was just cleaning and organizing, paint, you know, updating their lights. That's a huge thing too that I didn't discuss earlier, but that's one thing I tell homeowners all the time. When a buyer walks in and they see the bricks from the 1980s, they are reminded, oh yeah, this is an older house. It hasn't been updated. If they haven't updated their lights, wonder how that air conditioning is working. I wonder how old the roof is. I wonder, when the water tank is going to break. And so when you start reminding yourself that this is an older house because it wasn't updated, a lot of buyers will get scared off and they'll think, let's just keep looking. Maybe let's look at a new house so we don't have to worry about all these things. And so if I can tell a homeowner, by updating your lights, by making your colors today's colors, buyers will feel that this compares to other things out on the market. They're going to feel more comfortable making you a better offer, knowing you've maintained your home and you've taken care of it. And so those are important things. Again, it's all about what the buyer expects. That's the bottom line. And trying to assure the homeowners that the common goal is to get it sold quickly and for top dollar.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much for being on the show today.
You're welcome.
I really appreciate it, especially working through all that technical difficulties.
So that's it for the show. Thank you so much for listening. If you haven't left a review or rating on iTunes, please do so. We don't generate income or sponsorship from the podcast right now, and it's time-consuming to do interviews and do edits and show notes and all that good stuff. So if you enjoy the show, please do leave a review. You can also support the show now by making a donation on our website. But anyway, the key point is, if you can, please do leave a review, because it not only helps me establish the credibility on this show, so when I reach out to potential guests, it also encourages me to keep going. And as usual, feel free to ask any questions on the show notes or in our private Facebook group. You can find the show notes by going to www.stagemore.com/podcast. And that's it. Have a fantastic week and happy staging.